So, good morning, Christopher Nevill.
Good morning, Michelle Latterhand.
Thank you. Welcome. And did you have any ideas to discuss today?
No, not really. I mean, the number of subjects is so vast that we can pick on one. What have we not talked about? Have we talked about children?
Mostly, yes. In most of our discussions, children come up because
yes, they usually do.
Yes, we have discussed what they should have been taught, and the values and so on. So I think we sort of through that, and I would like them to pop up every now and then. But
children have a habit of doing that.
Yes, and in my capacity, I don't know if I'm qualified to discuss children. So I might ask good questions, but it's I have no experience with it.
No, that doesn't. Of course you do. They're on the planet, and you bump into them on a regular basis. You meet them at parties and things of that nature, and they're a very interesting animal. I think one of the most fascinating books that is written about children is the book, The Continuum. It was written about 20 years ago by an English woman who went to live with an Amazon tribe. And she spent some years with them there. And she came back with some provocative ideas of how we should bring up children. Because there's no doubt in my mind that the way in which we are bringing up children, I love that phrase, bringing up. We bring up children, we vomit them forth.
Less flattering,
yes. She discusses in some detail how the way in which we are bringing up children is more destructive rather than constructive. Obviously, some of it is controversial. And some of it you would say, how do you do that? Particularly in what we call our civilization these days. I mean, I'm not sure that we should go there because it's very controversial, but we could just touch on it. The way in which we are living at this particular point in time with what I call the atomic family, one man, one woman, and living in a house, isolated from the rest. The Zulus, and as you know, I still speak quite fluent Zulu. The Zulus have a phrase that it takes a village to raise a child. And when you go into the work of the continuum, it makes a lot of sense. And most of us grow up abused. Not literally in the sense of being hammered or thumped or anything else of that nature. We are abused with great love, with great caring. And people mean well. And there's nothing more, in my book, nothing more dangerous than meaning well. It can be quite poisonous. So the way in which we are living, these vast megalopolises, huge cities and things of that nature, and into which we now introduce children, is destructive in the extreme. I mean, I had good parents, nice parents. Perfect parents? No, we're not talking perfection. Good parents. But when I look back on what they did, there's no doubt in my mind that they abused me with great love, with great ignorance. It's not that they deliberately set out to hurt me or to misinform me or anything else of that nature. But yeah, and I suspect that probably applies to 90% of the population.
Could you give practical examples of that, for instance, where you say that you were abused with great love? Explain to me with how.
Probably the most cogent one, and it forms another part of my work, as it were, is that I was never allowed to be angry. And I remember the phrase, "Don't you talk to me like that." Oh, really? And yet anger is one of the prime human emotions. We're not taught how to deal with it. We're taught how to shut it up, how to stifle it. And if you stifle an energy, it's going to go somewhere. It's going to go somewhere.
That makes
Where
sense.
Does it go?
Though.
Yeah,
but
it does.
What I want to add with that is that wasn't the initial attention there that you should be respectful? Even if you're angry, you can maybe express your anger, but still be respectful. Is
yes,
that
no
not?
question. But that's a technique. And there's one thing that children are short of when they arrive here on the planet, and that is techniques of how to be here. But nobody sat me down. And I probably inflicted the same thing on my children. Not this last one, but the children I had in my first marriage. I almost certainly did the same because I didn't know any better. We just sat down. "Don't you talk to me like that. You are not allowed to get angry. Shush, shut up. Go to your room. Cool down." Really? Nobody sits you down and says, "You're angry." Okay. Why? What's going on? You're quite right in what you say. But those are techniques. And life is a technique. And what parents need to ask themselves these days is, how many techniques do they know themselves about how to make a relationship work? What is a relationship? Because that's what the basis is. What are you doing about making your relationship better? I think we have talked about that. Have we talked about that?
We have.
And it's a vast subject. Am I the last word on it? No. But I've got some interesting things to say about it, some controversial things to say about it. And right now, I'm busy writing a small paper, a short paper on. It's intended for young couples, or not necessarily young, but younger couples that are looking at going into a relationship. Primarily what we're talking about is a relationship with somebody of the opposite sex. And that in itself these days is a whole ball of wax.
Can of worms.
But, yeah, can of worms. And the first question I say that you must ask is, if I do this, what's in it for me? Now, the common wisdom is, oh no, that's too selfish. You can't ask that. Well, then why are you bothering to go into a relationship if you're not expecting to get something out of it? Now, what are you getting out of it? Do you sit down and say that this is what I want to get out of it, 1 to 10, and your 1 to 10 will be different to my 1 to 10? Because if you're not clear as to why you're going into the relationship, what's in it for me, so that's selfish. Yes, well, life is a selfish process. If you don't take care of yourself first, who else is going to? And we're not taught about that. No, you must always look after other people. Well, yeah, I know that. But then how, if you don't look after yourself, how on earth are you going to look after anybody else?
Yes.
So it is with this. So first question, what's in it for me? All right, he, she looks very nice, interesting, got a nice mind, looks like a nice person, looks like a good body, intelligent, etc., etc., etc. What's in it for me? And you better be very clear about that. Because if you go in with sort of airy-fairy stuff, oh, well, it's because I love them. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yes, I get that. It's quite interesting that you bring that up, because you have in previous sessions said that what we also miss in relationships is the basics should start by, how can I serve you? Now, how do you incorporate both these things? What's in it for me, and how can I serve you? Is it?
Well, there's only one reason I want to serve you, because I want your life to work. Why do I want your life to work? Because I choose to be in relationship with you. Well, now, why do I choose to be in relationship with you? Better be very clear about it.
Yeah. So is it then that if you're happy, I'm happy? Or should I be happy first and then make you happy?
Oh, I don't think it's a question of first or second. I think it's, because if both of you are doing this process, then it's likely to be a fairly simultaneous process. In other words, you're asking, how can I serve you? I'm asking, how can I serve you? That's a good start. It's a good start. So then you'll be happy, and because you're happy, I'll probably be happy, and so on and so forth. I mean, so it's not a question of who comes first or who comes second. Yeah. It's something that should happen, fancy word, contemporaneously at the same time.
Like a mutual compromise. That a good analogy or not really?
Always compromise. Because there's going to be times when I have to give up something so that you can have something. And vice versa. There'll be times when you have to give up a point of view. Why? Because. No better reason.
Although, isn't that one of the biggest obstacles we do get in relationships, because we become selfish in a different manner, where we don't have that insight to first know that I might be wrong, to second, how can I serve you, and look after myself as well, and then the next moment I want you to understand what my problems are and my challenges are, but I feel that I'm not heard. And that's, from my experience, where a lot of relationships go sideways, is that someone doesn't feel like they are being heard or attended to.
Yeah, but then that's the technique. So what's one of the big things that I deal with when I'm talking is listen. Look. Not only listen, because it's very often the dissatisfaction from the other person is not only expressed in words, it's expressed in actions. And these very often do not happen. Very often the answers are usually simple, but not easy. Because the one thing that we have to learn how to do frequently and often, and it's one of the great gifts that is given us, because we can do it at the drop of a hat, change your mind.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, the first man who started to speculate with the idea that maybe the earth is not flat, that it's round, had to say, maybe I'm wrong. Because if he had insisted, no, the earth is flat, not round. Okay, well then he wouldn't have gotten it anywhere.
Yes.
And Galileo had to start off with this thing, just, is it possible that the earth revolves around the sun? And if he'd said, no, that's impossible, the earth cannot revolve around the sun's got to revolve around the earth, well, he wouldn't have gotten anywhere.
It would have stopped right there.
He would have had to be willing to change his mind. And that's what we've all got to be. And it ties in with the other phrase that you and I have bandied about before, and that is be willing to be wrong. And if you're willing to be wrong, change your mind.
I just want to jump back to your previous comments. Apologies for interrupting. And light just went on there because, as you say, when you are head set on this is how it is, and there's no way it could be different, and so on, it is a conclusion, an ending, which means that is where the problem ends. It's what you demonstrated right now, and it's profound for me because this is why we do get stuck, because we're stuck at that ending and we don't want to change our mind. We don't want to think,
that's fine.
I might
but
be wrong.
Then you probably can't have a sensible relationship with that person.
So, but it makes so much sense that it stops there. That's it.
And
can't go further until you change your mind.
Absolutely.
And then you get stuck and you ask, oh, why am I stuck? What can I do? And it's so simple.
Change your mind.
Brilliant. Yeah. And
one of the most valuable things I learned as a young boy, I was 14, was this. There were older boys living across the road from us. And, you know, older boys sort of look at younger boys and think, yeah, right, okay. Mostly younger boys are a damn nuisance. But one day, so I never really was friendly with them. I knew who they were and we said hello to one another. But one day, they threw a party and they invited me. Not quite why they invited me, I don't know. But I did. And I went there and they were all, I was 14 and they were 16, 17, 18, and there were girls there of roughly the same age. So to say that I was out of my depth is putting it mildly. I thought, well, I can't dance. Nobody had ever taught me to dance. And I mean dance, not the shake, rattle, and roll that these young people do today, where you just get up and stand up and shake everything. We danced. And so I said, right, I'll put myself in charge of the record player. That shows how long ago it was, because that's what we had was discs. So I put myself in charge of the record player. And I chose the music and I played it. And it was fun. I wasn't miserable about it. I was quite fun. But then a girl looked at me and obviously felt sorry, like girls do. And she came over to me and she said, come on, let's dance. I said, I can't dance. And she said, of course you can dance. I'll show you. So half reluctantly, she was very pretty, half reluctantly, I allowed myself to be dragged onto the dance floor. And of course, I spent most of the time on her toes, because that's what happens, treading on your partner's feet. But she was very patient and very nice. And we struggled for a while until eventually I said, thank you very much, and politely went back to being in charge of the record player. And I think she also probably heaved a sigh of relief and went off to massage her feet. But one thing it taught me, I said, I am going to learn to dance. And the very next day, I went into the town and signed up at a dance studio for dance lessons. And boy, was that an education in having to change your mind and having to admit that you were wrong. It really was an education, because I learned the classical dances, waltz, tango, quickstep, samba, and I got quite good at them. I actually won medals in our little competitions, things like that. I got quite good at it. But you continually have to change your mind. You continually have to be willing to give up a point of view and accommodate your partner. was quite a lesson. These days where you stand over there and I stand over there, I could be dancing with a sack of potatoes.
Yeah, of course.
But in those days, they used to put a record between you so that you were up close and personal. So you had to be very aware of what your partner was doing. And sometimes you had to make quick changes to accommodate your partner. And they had to make quick changes to accommodate you. Marvelous lesson in relationships. Ballroom dancing. Marvelous lesson.
Oh.
The only way? No, but it's quite a fun way.
Yes, and healthy, and it's exercise.
And you've got an excuse to get up close and personal with a girl, which is always a thing.
Yeah, of course.
At the age of 16 or 17.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That is so interesting. And, you know, we don't think of things from perspectives like this. Why would you say, do you see these things differently than the general population? Where do you get your perspective from?
Because I'm clever. No, because I think about it. I meditate on it. And I ask the question, why? A lot. I mean, no, do I get angry from time to time? Of course I get angry. Why? What's happening? And that is something that we're not taught to do. And it's a technique. It's not, we don't do it automatically. We do it when we're taught how to do it.
Yeah.
One of the great questions of the universe in my book. Why?
Why
does it get dark?
Yes.
Why does it get dark? What is dark? Is it a substance? We call it, we say it's the absence of light. So what's light? Is light the absence of dark? Are there answers to this? Sometimes not. But the trick is to ask the question.
You see, yeah, as you said, the way we grew up, we weren't allowed to question anything. And that includes religion and politics, everything. There's no questioning. You just have to accept what we tell you. And I believe the world has changed in many ways in the past few decades. I would say at least in the past 30 years, that the newer generations have the inquisitive minds to question everything. They do, and it seems to come naturally, isn't it? And they also test more than how we tested when we were young, because we weren't allowed that freedom to test things. We weren't allowed to speak up. No,
I think there's some truth in that, at any rate, and one can blame that awful thing, the internet, for that, because now you can go onto the internet and say, why does the sun always rise in the east? Whereas that would have been an unthinkable question when I was a boy, because the answer I was likely to get was, because it does. Yeah, but why? Whereas today, a young person who looks around at his world and can say, well, why does it rise in the east? Why doesn't it rise in the west? There was a time when it did. The sun got up in the west.
So
yeah,
there comes the questions, right? how is that possible?
Well, there's a document a papyrus document that I believe still exists. It's called the Ipuwer, Ipuwer. I think I'm right. I'm not an expert on Egyptology, but I think I'm right. And it says there that the priests in the temple were having bets as to whether tomorrow the sun would get up in the east or the west. Is that true? I don't know, but it's written down.
But that's much like the internet, because things on the internet are also, you can't necessarily trust everything. And we all know, don't trust everything you read on the internet.
No.
So, yeah. But it's written down, you say.
It can start off, well, written down, that's a bit more effort. Somebody wrote it down on a piece of papyrus that the priests are wagering whether the sun will get up in the east or the west. It's probably got a little more truth behind it than somebody sitting on a cell phone talking to somebody and shooting his mouth off.
Of course.
So must I be relied upon? Yeah, pretty well. Because I'm certainly not going to lie to you with the object of deceiving you.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay, good. So after wrestling in the beginning with what shall we talk about, we've been speaking pretty consistently now for about 20 minutes on something.
Yes.
I think what it boils down to, and we can probably close this particular subject, is I think one of the great tragedies is our education system. Because what we are teaching our children is facts. 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, it's a lovely argument to say, well, does it equal 2? Maybe it doesn't. But that's another discussion. And we teach them a whole lot of facts, like the Battle of Waterloo was in 1812. Yeah, okay. Of what particular use is that? The delightful one that I like very much is my son asked me once after they had been battling in school with it. He said, "Dad, what's the point of square root?" And he was in, what standard was he? I don't know, 5 or 6. And I said, actually, there isn't any. There might be when you go to university and you want to become an architect or an engineer or something. But at this particular point in time, I frankly don't know why you're wasting time. Because who cares? I mean, when last did you sit down? I must work out the square root of this number. Really?
What for?
Really? Yes, if I was a mathematician or something, then maybe it's of value. And I think an awful lot of what we teach our children these days is of that quality. I mean, the one thing we don't talk about is the subject that we just spend some time on, is relationships.
And friendships also. If you think of when we were young in school and making friends and having our little group of friends and so on, we did that with trial and error, right? So you made friends and see if it works and see if you have things in common, and maybe it doesn't, it fades away, you meet someone else and so on. But we were never taught how to maintain those relationships. We were never taught how to maintain or handle the conflict in such a way that the relationship won't break apart afterwards. If we were taught conflict management,
there we go,
would make our lives so much easier in friendships, in relationships, in workplaces, everywhere. But in many of us, when we experience conflict or when someone doesn't agree with us or doesn't like what we do, it ends up in a conflict, and then it's also, again, that dead stop where
dead stop.
Yeah, it stops there unless you change your mind and say, okay, maybe I was wrong, you know? So it comes back to that again.
And we're not taught the value of that. And there's a wonderful American author. He was actually Italian, a chappie by the name of Leo Biscagli. I like his work a lot. And he was an Italian that came to live in America at the turn of the century, when America sent out that disastrous statement, send me your poor, your disadvantaged, your ignorant, and there will be a home for them in America. At any rate, the Biscaglios went to America. He had a rough, very rough school, because his mother believed that garlic was the cure for everything. So she used to rub him down with garlic every day before he went to school so that he wouldn't catch any unknown diseases. Can you imagine?
My goodness, the poor boy. Yes.
A 7-year-old boy going to school reeking of garlic. I mean,
all the time.
Hello.
Oh, shame.
So he had a bit of a rough time. He's very funny about it. At any rate, he educated, he got a degree, and he ended up at one of the great universities on the California coast, Los Angeles, somewhere, one of the great universities. And he went to them and said, can I start teaching and talking about love? And the way he tells the story is that the principals of the university looked at him and thought, love? What do you mean? This is a university. We don't talk about things like that. And he said, well, let me try. And eventually he persuaded that he would offer this course on love. And he had advertised it at the university. And he fully expected to get half a dozen students. And so, well, it'll be what it is. And he looked around for a small lecture room. And of course, there wasn't one available. And he eventually ended up with quite a large lecture room that could seat 300 or 400 people. And he opened it on the door and he walked into the lecture room and it was packed.
Wow. Everyone wanted to know about love.
Everybody wanted to know about love. And in the book, he says that after 16 years of teaching and probing with sharp minds, I mean, university student minds, they still didn't have an answer.
Sure.
So do we have an answer for love? It's like life. Is there an answer for life? Why are we here? I don't know. I don't know. Why are we here? Why is there love? It's strange emotion that can drive you mad. What is it? I don't believe there is an answer. But we can engage.
Yeah.
We can engage it. We can have a look at it. We can turn it over. And in that, we examine in detail what it means to be human. That's the big question. What does it mean to be human? Do I know the answer to that? Nope. It's very hard. Because we are very hard.
And there's no one rule, because we're all different. We're all unique. No? We're all the same, but unique as well. So
absolutely,
the way we understand is different, probably from everyone else around us. So
and
it's
do we
not
teach
you go ahead.
And we don't teach our children. We don't teach our children to handle this.
No. Our children goes into the world expecting everyone else to be like them and to think like. I mean, that was a big challenge for me when, when I left school after I finished matric. At 17, it was very, very hard for me to understand that people don't understand things like I do. So
absolutely,
there's no. It's not that there's no point in explaining, but I have to try to be as clear and to the point as possible.
Yep.
Think about my words, because I must understand that you and whoever else is around me don't think and understand and hear what I hear. And that may be also a movement in the right direction if we learn to communicate like this, very clear. And even if it goes a little slow, you notice I most of the time I speak very slowly, because I contemplate each word, each sentence. I work out and think, will you understand it if I say it this way?
Fantastic. See, because now you're back to that phrase, that rather smart-ass phrase like Bandera. How can I serve you? And implicit in that is that you must be willing to be wrong. Not that you are wrong necessarily, but be willing to be wrong. Because as soon as you're willing, then you lay the way open for another point of view.
Yes.
Oh. As soon as you say, right, you close the door. What off? Bang.
Right there. And you get stuck. This I learned today. You get stuck.
Absolutely.
Because you close it off there. You stop it right there.
And then you simply cannot have a sensible relationship. And we're seeing this in this time of ours now, where you've got Russia and
Ukraine
going at one another. Each one, the Ukrainians saying, we're right, and the Russians saying, no, you're wrong, we're right. And they're throwing bombs at one another. Ay, 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 ay.
Wow. Well, a final message. Our time's running out. So what is your message to the public today?
It's two questions. How can I serve you? And then be willing to be wrong. And if you can carry those two as banners in your everyday conversations, you will save yourself and the people that you come into contact with a great deal of grief. You might even have a very pleasurable relationship. How about that?
And that's not too hard to do, though. We must just remember.
Take care.
Thank you, Christopher, and you as well. Have a lovely weekend.